Happy Tales, Cinderella.
Yay! Story time!
Yes, it is. Today I'll tell you the story of Cinderella. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful girl named Cinderella. She lived with her wicked stepmother and 2 stepsisters. They treated Cinderella horribly. One day, they were invited for a grand ball in the king's palace, but Cinderella's stepmother would not let her go. They went off to the ball, leaving Cinderella alone. Cinderella felt sad and began to cry. Suddenly, a fairy godmother appeared and said,
Don't cry, Cinderella. I'll send you to the ball.
Cinderella was sad. She said,
I don't have a gown to wear for the ball.
The fairy godmother waved her magic wand and changed Cinderella's old clothes into a beautiful new gown. The fairy godmother then touched Cinderella's feet with the magic wand, and she had beautiful glass slippers. The fairy godmother found 6 mice playing near a pumpkin in the kitchen. She touched them with her magic wand. They became 4 shiny black horses and 2 coachmen and a golden coach. Cinderella happily set off for the ball. Before leaving, the fairy godmother said,
Cinderella, this magic will only last until midnight. You must be back by then.
When Cinderella entered the palace, everybody was struck by her beauty. The handsome prince saw her and fell in love with her. The prince danced with her all night, and nobody recognized the beautiful dancer. Cinderella was so happy that she forgot what the fairy godmother had said. As the clock started to strike 12, Cinderella remembered and she rushed home. One of her glass slippers came off, but Cinderella ran on. She reached home just as the clock struck 12. Her coach turned back into a pumpkin, the horses into mice, and her fine ball gown into rags. Her stepmother and stepsisters reached home shortly after that. They were talking about the beautiful lady who had been dancing with the prince. The prince, who was in love, wanted to find out who the beautiful girl was, but he did not even know her name. He found a glass slipper that had come off Cinderella's foot. The prince said,
The lady whose foot fits the slipper will be the one I marry.
The next day, the prince took the glass slipper to all the houses in the kingdom. All the women in the kingdom tried the slipper, but it would not fit any of them. Cinderella's stepsisters also tried on the little glass slipper. They tried to squeeze their feet into the slipper. Cinderella's stepmother would not let her try the slipper on. But the prince saw her and said,
Let her also try on the slipper.
The slipper fit her perfectly. The prince recognized her from the ball. He married Cinderella, and together they lived happily ever after.
Oh, that was a nice story.
Yes, it was. See? Good things do happen to good people. One just has to be patient and have faith. Till next time, children. Rapunzel, Goldilocks, Pinocchio, Dopey.
We are here.
Good. Today I'm going to tell you the story of Rapunzel and her long hair. Once upon a time, in a house that overlooked a beautiful garden, lived a childless couple. They prayed to God every day to bless them with a child. One day, God answered their prayers. They were going to have a baby. Their days passed in happiness, but alas, the wife fell ill. She would not eat nothing, and the husband was worried. He tried to tempt her with good things, but she refused everything.
But you must eat something, my dear,
he begged her.
There is a herb called Rapunzel in the garden next door. I'll feel better if I can eat that,
she said. The husband's heart sank. This garden was owned by a wicked witch, but he loved his wife. He decided to go into the garden when the witch was away. He had managed to pluck the herb, but as he was about to leave, the wicked witch came back. "You thief! How dare you enter my garden?" she screamed. He begged,
Please don't curse me. If my wife doesn't eat this herb, she will die. She is going to have a baby and is very ill.
The witch finally said, "I'll let you go on one condition. You will give me the baby after it's born." The poor man had to agree. He took the herb to his wife, and she soon recovered and gave birth to a beautiful girl. But as agreed, the witch came to take away the baby. She took baby Rapunzel, locked her in a high tower. The tower had no doors or stairs. There was only a window on top. The only person whom Rapunzel ever saw was a wicked witch. She grew up to become beautiful, have a wonderful voice, and her golden hair grew very long. Every day the wicked witch came to the tower and would shout, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel would drop her long braided hair through the window. The witch used the hair as a rope to climb down into the tower. One day, a handsome prince was passing by and heard her sing and fell in love with her voice. The prince saw the witch climbing up to the tower using Rapunzel's hair. The next day, the prince too called out to Rapunzel. "Let down your hair," he said. The prince climbed to the top of the tower. Alas, the witch soon discovered the prince with Rapunzel. She pushed him from the tower onto a thorny bush. Blinding him, she banished Rapunzel into the desert. After many years passed, the blind prince wandered into the same desert and heard Rapunzel singing. Following the sound, he found her. They hugged each other in joy. Tears of happiness that rolled down Rapunzel's cheek fell on the prince's eyes. He could see again. The prince took Rapunzel to his kingdom, and they lived happily ever after.
I'm so happy that they found each other.
I know, good always overcomes evil. Anyways, till next time.
Peter Pan, somewhere in fairyland.
I just love the stories that Fairy Godmother tells us. I do hope she's here soon.
Hello, children. Gather around. Today I'll tell you the story of Peter Pan, the boy who refused to grow up. Once upon a time, Wendy, John, and Michael Darling lived in London. Their mother used to tell them wonderful stories every night. Peter Pan, a leader of lost boys, used to sit outside the window and listen to these stories. One night, as Peter was leaving, he lost his shadow. Wendy woke to find a strange boy sitting on the floor crying. She said,
Who are you? Why are you crying?
"I'm Peter Pan," said the boy. "I'm crying because my shadow won't stick to me."
Don't cry, said Wendy. We can fix that.
And she sewed Peter Pan's shadow to the tips of his shoes. Peter was delighted. "Fly back to Neverland with me and my fairy, Tinkerbell," Peter begged. Tinkerbell dusted the children with fairy dust so they could fly. The children were very happy there in Neverland. They had lots of adventures. But soon Wendy and her brothers wanted to go home. They asked Peter to come too, but he didn't want to. He asked Tinkerbell to guide them home. The next morning, Tinkerbell and the children left for home. But Captain Hook's pirates were hiding nearby. They captured them and marched them towards the pirates' ship. Tinkerbell escaped and hurried back to tell Peter what had happened. "It's Hook or me time," yelled Peter as they flew off to save the others. On the pirate's ship, Captain Hook demanded,
Who wants to become a pirate?
The boys shook their heads. They looked brave, but they were afraid. Suddenly, they heard the tick-tock of a crocodile who had swallowed a clock. Now it was Captain Hook's turn to be afraid. But the tick-tock was only Peter imitating the crocodile. "I've got you now, Hook!" shouted Peter. Captain Hook swung at Peter with his sword, but Peter was quick and stepped away. He slashed at Hook with his sword until they came close to the edge of the ship. Peter lunged with his sword, and Hook fell into the sea while the crocodile was waiting for him. And that was the end of Captain Hook. Soon, Peter and Tinker Bell set off for London with Wendy and the boys. Wendy's parents were happy to see their children again. Mr. and Mrs. Darling hugged Wendy, John, and Michael. They asked Peter to stay with them too, but he said, "I'm going to stay in Neverland where I never have to grow up."
Goodbye then, Peter.
We'll miss you, everyone called. Peter Pan and Tinker Bell waved goodbye and flew home to Neverland. I hope you liked the story. Life is fun with friends, but we all do have to grow up and come home at some point.
Thank you for the story. It was really nice.
Until next time.
Robin Hood.
Dear Fairy Godmother, do tell us a story.
Okay, today's story is about Robin Hood. Once upon a time in Sherwood Forest lived a good-hearted bandit called Robin Hood. As a boy, Robin had been cheated by a few noblemen, and since then he had vowed to rob the rich and give to the poor. The sheriff of Nottingham had placed many rewards for the capture of Robin Hood, but nobody had ever caught him. Robin Hood was followed by a band of loyal men. They would warn Robin Hood whenever the sheriff had any new plan to catch him. The rich were scared of going to Sherwood Forest because they knew Robin Hood would attack them. The sheriff of Nottingham wanted to capture Robin Hood, but he did not know how to. Finally, the sheriff thought of a plan.
Let us have a contest for the best shooter in Nottingham. Robin Hood cannot resist such a competition. He will surely come. When he does, my guards will capture him,
he told his noblemen. Now, there was none better than Robin Hood with his bow and arrow, and he could not resist taking part in any competition. Robin Hood's loyal men tried to stop him, but he was not willing to listen. So the next day the contest began. The crowds were seated, and there were 10 contestants. The sheriff turned to one of the guards and asked,
Has Robin come?
No, your highness. Robin has red hair, and none of the contestants have red hair. The sheriff said,
He must be scared.
The contest began. Soon, William, the sheriff's man, and a stranger to a green outfit were eyeing for the first prize. It was time for the last arrow to be shot. The winner of this round would be declared the best shooter in Nottingham. William took aim first and shot. It was a bullseye. The sheriff applauded.
Good shot, William,
he said. Then it was turn of the man in green. He let go of his arrow. To everyone's amazement, the arrow went straight through William's arrow and hit the bullseye. And within a flash, the green archer let go of 2 more arrows, which came flying towards the chair on which the sheriff was sitting and stuck on either side of it. The sheriff was scared. The man in green was none other than Robin Hood. He pulled off his black wig, threw it to the ground, jumped over a wall on his waiting horse, and was gone.
Get him, you fools! That is Robin Hood,
shouted the helpless sheriff. But it was too late. Robin Hood had escaped again.
I like Robin Hood. He steals from the rich to give to the poor.
Well, stealing is stealing, but I'm glad you liked it. I am off. See you soon. Little Mermaid. Well, children, today I'm going to tell you the story of the Little Mermaid. Once upon a time, in a deep sea kingdom, there lived a sea king with his 5 mermaid daughters. Jorinda was the youngest and the loveliest among them. She was beautiful and had a beautiful voice. One day, while Jorinda was watching ships go by, she saw a young man falling off his ship. She swam swiftly to save him and dragged him to the shore. As soon as people came, Jorinda swam away. He was actually the prince of a kingdom. The prince looked around for the girl who had saved him, but no one knew who she was. Jorinda often thought of the young man and fell in love with the prince. But she was sad because he had a fishtail, not feet, and so could never be with him. In the deep sea lived a witch with magical powers. One day, Jorinda went to ask her for human legs. The witch said,
If you give me your beautiful voice, I shall give you legs. But remember, every time you set your feet on the ground, it will hurt.
Jorinda agreed. She did not mind the pain. All she wanted was to be with the prince. As soon as she got her 2 feet, Jorinda lost her voice. The witch also said,
If your prince marries anybody else, you shall dissolve in the seawater.
Soon, Jorinda found herself lying on the beach, and the prince looking down at her. He asked, Where are you from? But she could not reply. The prince took her to his palace. They became good friends and had a wonderful time together. She loved the prince, but the prince was in love with the maiden who had saved him. The prince did not realize it had been Jorinda, and she couldn't tell him. One day, the prince went to meet the daughter of a neighboring king. Enchanted by her beauty, the prince was convinced this was the same maiden who rescued him. He asked the princess to marry him. A grand wedding took place. Jorinda was heartbroken. That night, crying, she ran to the seashore. There she saw her 4 sisters. One of them handed her a knife and said,
Here, Jorinda, this is a magic knife. We gave our long hair locks to the witch of the deep sea, and she gave this. Kill your prince, and you shall turn into a mermaid again.
Jorinda took the magic knife and went to the prince's room at night. But she loved him so much, she could not kill him. She knew she would vanish into the sea, just as the witch of the deep sea had said. She sat on the shore and wept. Suddenly, from the sky came a pink cloud. It lifted her into the sky.
Where am I?
Asked Jorinda, for now she could talk. The fairies replied,
We are the air fairies. You are now one of us because you did a good deed for the person you love.
From then on, the Little Mermaid, Jorinda, lived in the sky with the fairies.
Oh, that was a sad story. The Little Mermaid gave up so much and got nothing.
Well, at least she was taken up to the skies to be a sky fairy because of her good heart.
Yes, that's true.
Anyways, children, I have to be off to tell other little children's stories. Rumpelstiltskin. Alright, children, today I'm going to tell you the story of Rumpelstiltskin. Once there was a poor miller who had a beautiful daughter. One day, at the king's court, he boasted that his daughter could spin straw into gold. The king ordered the miller's daughter to come to the palace. He took her to a room full of straw, locked her in, and said to her,
You must spin all the straw into gold tonight, or you shall die.
Poor girl did not know what to do and began to cry. Suddenly, a tiny man came out of nowhere and asked her, "Why are you crying?" When she told him, he said, "Don't worry, I'll spin the straw into gold, but you have to give me your necklace." She agreed. The dwarf spun all the straw into gold. The next day, when the king saw this, he was pleased. He became greedy. He took the girl into a bigger room. She began to cry. The tiny man came into the room once more. This time, she gave him her ring, and he spun all the straw into gold. The third morning, the king saw the room full of gold. He took her to the biggest room filled with straw, locked her in, and said,
"If you spin all the straw into gold, you shall become my wife."
Once again, she began to cry. This time, when the little man came to her, she said, "I do not have anything to give you, sir. What will I do?" He said, "Promise me that you'll give me your firstborn child when you become the queen." The girl agreed. The tiny man spun all the straw into gold. The next day, the king was pleased. He married the girl, and soon they had a baby. The tiny man came to the queen to take her baby away, but she had forgotten about the promise. She begged him to leave her baby alone. The tiny man said, "I'll not take your baby if you could guess my name. I'll give you 3 days." The queen tried to remember all kinds of names. The next night when he came, she told him all the uncommon names she could think of. "Perhaps your name is short ribs or sheepshanks." But he always answered, "That is not my name." The next night, the dwarf came to the queen again, but she could not guess his real name. On the third day, one of the queen's servants went into the forest to find a little man. The servant found him dancing and singing, "Today I bake, tomorrow I brew, the next I'll have the young queen's child. Ha! Glad am I that no one knew that rumpelstiltskin I am styled." The servant ran back and told the queen the name of the dwarf. That night, when the little man came to the queen and challenged her, "Do you give up? Shall I take your child away?" The queen smiled and replied, "Is your name Harry? Is it Conrad? Perhaps it is Rumpelstiltskin?" Hearing his name, the tiny man screamed, "How could you possibly know my name?" Saying this, he ran away deep into the forest, never to be seen again.
Yay! The baby was saved! That was a scary story, but I'm glad it had a happy ending.
Well, I'm glad you liked the story. So until next time. Red Riding Hood.
I am bored. What should we do? It's almost story time. Fairy godmother should be here soon. I do hope she is here soon. I love her stories.
Hello, children. Have you been waiting for me?
Yes, we have. I was getting so bored.
All right. Today's story is about Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a little girl called Red Riding Hood who lived with her mother in a little cottage on the outskirts of a jungle. One day, Little Red Riding Hood's mother said to her, "Take this basket of food to your grandma's cottage, but don't talk to strangers on the way." Promising not to, Little Red Riding Hood skipped off. The path to her grandmother's house was through a dark forest. On her way, she met the big bad wolf who asked,
"Where are you going, little girl?"
To my grandmother's house, Mr. Wolf.
She answered, though she had promised not to speak to strangers.
The big bad wolf then ran to Grandmother's cottage much before Little Red Riding Hood and knocked on the door. When Grandma opened the door, he locked her up in the cupboard. The wicked wolf then wore Grandma's clothes and lay on her bed, waiting for Little Red Riding Hood. When Little Red Riding Hood reached the cottage, she entered and went to Grandma's bedside.
My, what big eyes you have, Grandma,
she said in surprise.
All the better to see you with, my dear,
replied the wolf.
My, what big ears you have, Grandma,
said Little Red Riding Hood.
All the better to hear you with, my dear,
said the wolf.
What big teeth you have, Grandma,
said Little Red Riding Hood.
All the better to eat you with,
growled the wolf, pouncing on her. Little Red Riding Hood screamed, and the woodcutters in the forest came running to the cottage. They beat the big bad wolf and rescued Grandma from the cupboard. Grandma hugged Little Red Riding Hood with joy. The big bad wolf ran away, never to be seen again. Little Red Riding Hood had learnt her lesson and never spoke to strangers ever again.
Ugh, that was a scary story.
Yes, it was. But it was important. You should always listen to your mother and should never, ever talk to strangers.
I am a good girl. I never talk to strangers. Neither do I.
Good. Now I am off. So see you next time. Hansel and Gretel.
The weather's just right for a nice long story. Yeah, there comes Fairy Godmother, just on time.
Hello, children. How have you been? I hope you've been good.
Yes, we have.
All right. Today I'll tell you the story of Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, by a great forest, lived a poor woodcutter with his 2 children. The children's mother had died when they were young, and the woodcutter had got married again. The stepmother was very cruel to children. The boy was called Hansel and the girl Gretel. Times were hard, and soon the woodcutter could no longer procure even their daily bread. Now, when he thought over this by night in his bed and tossed about in his anxiety, he groaned and said to his wife,
"What is to become of us? How are we to feed our poor children when we no longer have anything for ourselves?" "I'll tell you what, husband,"
answered the wicked woman.
"Early tomorrow morning we'll take the children out into the forest to where it is the thickest. There we will light a fire for them and give each of them 1 more piece of bread, and then we'll go to our work and leave them alone. They'll not find a way home again, and we shall be rid of them."
The poor, sad woodcutter had no option but to agree. The next day, she took the children deep into the forest and left them there. Clever Hansel, who had guessed that this might happen, had dropped some breadcrumbs along the way so that they could find their way back home. Alas! The birds had eaten up all the crumbs, and they couldn't find the path that led back home. Hansel and Gretel went deeper and deeper into the forest. They were hungry and tired. Finally, after walking for a long distance, they saw a cottage made of chocolate, candies, and cake.
"Look, Hansel, a chocolate brick!"
shouted Gretel in delight, and both ate it hungrily. Now, a wicked witch lived there. When she saw Hansel and Gretel, she wanted to eat them. She grabbed the children and locked them in a cage. The witch decided to make a soup out of Hansel and eat him first. She began boiling a huge pot of water for the soup. Just then, Gretel creaked out of her cage. She gave the witch a mighty push from behind, and the witch fell into the boiling water. She howled in pain and died instantly. Hansel and Gretel found treasure lying around the cottage. They carried it home with them. Their mother had died, and their father welcomed them back with tears of joy. They never went hungry again.
That was nice. I'm glad they got home safely.
Yes, I'm glad too. Snow White. All right, today I'll tell you the story of Snow White and her 7 dwarfs.
Oh, I know the story. I'm in it. Well, I don't, and I want to hear it.
All right. Once upon a time, there lived a princess named Snow White. Her hair was black as coal, and her skin as white as snow. Snow White's stepmother, the queen, was very cruel. The queen treated Snow White horribly, but Snow White never complained. The queen had a magic mirror, and every day she would ask it,
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the first one of all?
Every day the mirror had the same reply,
You are the fairest.
and the queen was happy. But soon, Snow White grew older and beautiful. One day, the magic mirror said,
Snow White is the fairest one of all.
in a jealous rage, the queen called her royal huntsman.
Take Snow White into the forest and kill her,
She commanded.
and as proof, bring me her heart.
Snow White,
Said the kind hunter.
I cannot kill you. You must run away and hide from her.
Snow White ran into the woods. At last, she came to a cottage. Then she heard voices singing in the distance. The 7 dwarfs who lived in the cottage were coming home from a hard day at work in a diamond mine. Their names are Sleepy, Grumpy, Happy, Doc, Dopey, Sneezy, and Bashful. Snow White decided to stay with them. Soon, the evil queen found out that Snow White was still alive. She magically turned into an old hag. Then she took an apple and dipped it in poison.
One bite of this, and Snow White will sleep forever.
She laughed. The old woman appeared at the cottage and said,
Taste one of my delicious apples.
Then she held the poisoned apple out to Snow White. The animals in the forest ran to the dwarfs to warn them that something was very wrong. The 7 dwarfs raced to the cottage and found Snow White lying lifelessly on the floor. The sad dwarfs built a bed of gold and glass for Snow White. They kept watch over her day and night. Then one day, a handsome prince rode into the forest. How beautiful the young lady was! The prince knelt down and kissed Snow White. His kiss awakened her. Snow White and the prince rode off to his kingdom, where they lived happily ever after.
Oh, that was beautiful. Just like I remember it.
Beauty and the Beast.
I have a feeling that today we're going to hear a wonderful story.
Hello, children. So would you like to hear another fairy tale today?
Yes, please.
All right. Today I'll tell you the story of Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, there lived a merchant and his 3 daughters. One day, the merchant had to go off on work far away. He asked his daughters what they wanted from there. The first and the second daughter asked for lovely dresses, but the third daughter, Beauty, said,
Father, I only need a rose.
The merchant, on his way back, had to cross through the deep forest. It was dark, and the merchant tried to find a place to rest. He suddenly found a huge empty castle. Inside, there was a table with delicious food, and he ate it all. Then the merchant went into the bedroom and slept on a soft bed. The next day, as he was leaving, he saw a beautiful rose bush and remembered Beauty's gift. He plucked a red rose from the bush. Suddenly, a ferocious beast wearing fine silk clothing roared,
I gave you food and a bed, and now you're stealing my roses?
The merchant was scared and told the beast about Beauty's gift. The beast decided to let him go only if he promised to send Beauty to the castle. The merchant agreed and ran home. He told Beauty about the beast's request. Beauty, who loved her father a lot, agreed to go stay with the beast. The beast treated Beauty with kindness. At first, Beauty was afraid of the beast, but slowly she began to like him. One day, the beast asked Beauty to marry him, but she refused. She was still afraid of him, but Beauty missed her family. The beast gave her a mirror in which she could see her family. One day, Beauty looked in a mirror and saw that her father was very ill and dying. She went to the beast and pleaded,
Please, let me go home and see my father before he dies.
But the beast said,
You may go to stay with your father for 7 days, but you must promise to return after that.
Her father, on seeing Beauty, felt very happy and soon recovered. Beauty stayed with her family for 7 days and more. She forgot the beast, but one night she had a terrible nightmare in which she saw the beast was ill and about to die, calling for her. Beauty woke up and went back to the castle because she did not mean to hurt the beast. She cried,
Please don't die, beast. I love you.
The beast magically turned into a handsome prince. He said,
I was under a curse that could only be lifted when someone fell truly in love with me.
And then Beauty and the beast were married, and together they lived happily ever after.
Oh, that was a wonderful story.
Yes, when you love someone, magic could happen. Jack and the Beanstalk.
Hello, guys. I do hope Fairy Godmother comes along soon. I really want to hear a story.
Hello, children. I hope you've been good.
Yes, we have. Do tell us a story.
All right. Today I'll tell you the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, there was a boy called Jack. He lived with his widowed mother. They were very poor. All they had was a cow. One morning, they did not have any food at the house. So Jack's mother told Jack to take their cow to the market and sell her. On the way to the market, Jack met a man. He was a very strangely dressed man. He convinced Jack to give the cow to him in exchange for magical beans. Jack took the beans and went back home. When Jack's mother saw the beans, she was very angry. She threw the beans out of the window and scolded Jack for his foolishness. The next morning, Jack looked out of the window. There was a giant beanstalk in the courtyard. He went outside and could not see the top of the beanstalk. It was that big, so Jack started to climb the beanstalk. Jack climbed up the sky through the clouds. Up above the clouds, Jack saw a beautiful castle and went inside. While roaming inside the castle, Jack suddenly heard a voice.
Fee, fi, fo, fum.
The voice said. Jack, really scared, ran into the nearest cupboard. From inside the cupboard, Jack saw an enormous giant walking into the room. The giant sat down at the table. On the table, there was a hen and a golden harp.
Lay,
said the giant. The hen laid an egg. It was made of gold.
Sing,
said the giant. The golden harp began to sing, and soon the giant was asleep. Seeing an opportunity, Jack jumped out of the cupboard. He took the hen and golden harp from the giant's table and proceeded out of the door. Suddenly the harp sang, Help, master! The giant woke up and shouted,
Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell a boy, be he alive or be he dead. I'll grind his bones to make my bread.
Jack ran out of the castle and started climbing down the beanstalk, but the giant also came down after him. Jack shouted, Mother, help! Jack's mother, who was a very clever lady, took an axe and chopped down the beanstalk. As the magical beanstalk fell to the ground, the giant too fell and crashed along with it. Until this day, no one has seen the giant ever since.
Ooh, that was exciting. Yeah, I'm so glad that Jack was safe.
I'm so glad you liked the story. Until next time. Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Hey, Goldie, why is your name Goldilocks? Obviously, it is because of my golden hair, silly. What are you guys talking about? We are talking about my golden hair. You do have beautiful hair.
Hello, children. I hope you've been good.
Yes, we have.
Good, because today I'll tell you the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Oh, that is my story.
Yes, it is. Once upon a time, there was a little girl called Goldilocks. She was a very playful little girl who had lovely golden hair, and that is why she was called Goldilocks. One day, while walking in the woods, she saw a pretty cottage. She went inside and saw 3 bowls of porridge on the table. Tasting the porridge in the biggest bowl, she said,
This porridge is too hot.
She tasted some porridge from the second bowl and said,
This porridge is too cold.
Then tasting some porridge from the third bowl, she said,
This porridge is just right.
And she ate all of it. After that, Goldilocks felt sleepy, so she went upstairs where she saw 3 beds. She lay on the first bed and said,
This bed is too hard.
She lay on the second bed and said,
This bed is too soft.
Finally, she lay on the third bed and said,
This bed is just right.
And so Goldilocks curled up and went to sleep. The cottage actually belonged to 3 bears. When they came home in the evening, the 3 bears saw that someone has been there. Mama and Papa Bear ate their porridge, but the little bear wailed, There's nothing left in my bowl. When they went upstairs to sleep, Papa Bear and Mama Bear found their beds had been used. Papa Bear shouted,
Someone has been sleeping in my bed.
Then Mama Bear cried, Someone has been sleeping in my bed. The little bear saw Goldilocks sleeping in his bed and squealed, Someone is still sleeping in my bed. Goldilocks awoke, and seeing the 3 bears, she jumped up in fright and ran out of the door, never to be seen in the woods ever again.
Oh, so that's why you don't go into the woods. I've been wondering why. How could you fall asleep in a bear's bed? I didn't know it was a bear's bed, and I was very sleepy.
Well, I'm glad you liked the story. Princess and the Pea.
I'm so excited. I just love listening to your stories. So what is today's story about?
Today's story is about a princess and a pea. Once upon a time, there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess, but she would have to be a real princess. He traveled all over the land to find one. There were princesses everywhere, but it was difficult to find out whether they were real. There was always something about them that was not as it should be. So he came home again and was sad, for he would have liked very much to have a real princess. One evening, a terrible storm came on. There was thunder and lightning, and the rain poured down in torrents. Suddenly, a knocking was heard at the city gate, and the old king went to open it. It was a princess standing out there in front of the gate, but she looked terrible and dirty standing there in the rain. The water ran down from her hair and clothes. It ran down into the toes of her shoes and out again at the heels. And yet, she said she was a real princess. Well, you'll soon find that out, thought the old queen, but she said nothing. went into the bedroom, took all the bedding off the bedstand, and laid a pea on the bottom. Then she took 20 mattresses and laid them on the pea, and then 20 eider-down beds on top of the mattresses. On this, the princess had to lie all night. In the morning, she was asked how she had slept.
"Oh, very badly," she said. "I have scarcely closed my eyes all night. Heaven only knows what was in the bed, but I was lying on something hard, so that I am black and blue all over my body. It's horrible."
Now they knew she was a real princess, because she had felt the pea right through the 20 mattresses and 20 eider-down beds. Nobody but a real princess could be as sensitive as that. So the prince took her for his wife, for now he knew he had a real princess. They lived happily ever after.
Oh, she must have been really a princess, if she could feel a pea under so many mattresses. Hey, I can't feel a pea under even one mattress. But you're not the princess. Hee hee.
True. Anyway, I'm glad you liked the story, Frog Prince. Today I'll tell you the story of the Frog Prince. Once upon a time, there was a princess whose favorite plaything was a golden ball. One day, she threw it so high that it fell into the spring, which was so deep she could not see the bottom of it. She said to herself,
"Alas, if I could only get my ball again, I would give everything that I have in the world."
A frog put its head out of the water and said,
If you let me live with you and eat off from your golden plate and sleep upon your bed, I'll bring you your ball.
The princess thought to herself,
"He can never even get out of the spring to visit me, though he may be able to get my ball, so there's no harm in agreeing."
So she said to the frog,
"If you bring me my ball, I'll do all you ask."
Then the frog dived deep into the water and came up with the ball. As soon as the young princess saw her ball, she picked it up and ran home. The frog called after her, but in vain. The next day, at dinner, she heard a strange noise, plop, 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 as if something was coming up the staircase, and soon a knock at the door, and a voice cried out and said,
Open the door, my princess dear. Open the door, and mind the words that you have said by the fountain.
The princess ran to the door and opened it and slammed it shut. The king asked her who it was. She said,
"That was a nasty frog that lifted my ball out of the spring for me. I told him that he could live with me here, thinking that he could never get out of the spring. But there he is at the door."
While she was speaking, the frog knocked again at the door and said,
Open the door, my princess dear. Remember the words that you have said by the fountain.
The king then told the princess,
As you have given your word, you must keep it, so let him in.
She did so, and the frog came close to the table where the princess sat and said,
Lift me up on a chair so that I can eat out of your plate.
This she did, and when he had eaten, he said,
Now carry and put me into your bread.
And the princess, very unwilling, took him up and put him on her pillow, where he slept all night long. He left as soon as it was morning, and the princess was glad it was over. But she was mistaken. He came back the next day, and the third night he did the same. But when the princess awoke in the morning, she was astonished to see that instead of the frog, a handsome prince gazing on her. He told her that he had been enchanted by a spiteful fairy who had changed him into a frog, till some princess should take him out of the spring and let him eat from her plate and sleep upon her bed for 3 nights.
You have released me, and now I have nothing to wish for but that you marry me, and I promise to love you as long as you live.
The young princess said,
Yes,
They then took leave of the king and got into a coach with 8 horses, and all set out, full of joy and merriment, for the princess' kingdom, and there they lived a great many years.
That was a nice story. Yeah.
I'm glad you liked it, Bluebeard.
I do wish the fairy godmother would come soon. I would love to hear a nice and exciting story.
Your wish is fulfilled. Today I'll tell you the story of Bluebeard. Once upon a time, there lived a lord named Bluebeard. Sadly, all his wives would die, so the noble lord would get married again. Nobody found this strange, nor did the sweet and beautiful young girl Bluebeard took as a new wife. A month later, Bluebeard said to his wife,
I must leave for a few weeks,
and handed her a bunch of keys, but warned her not to open the little room at the end of the corridor.
Don't worry, I won't,
said Bluebeard's wife. The days went by. The young girl went around all the rooms except the one at the end of the corridor. One day, bursting with curiosity, she opened the door and walked into the little room. Inside were the bodies of all of Bluebeard's former wives. Terror-stricken, the girl ran out of the room, but the bunch of keys slipped from her grasp. She picked them up and noticed that the key to the little room was stained with blood. But try as she would, the bloodstain wouldn't wash away. Bluebeard soon came home and asked for his keys. When Bluebeard's wife put the keys into his hand, he saw the bloodstains.
You went into the little room, didn't you? Well, you'll soon go back again, for good,
he said. Just then there was a knock at the door, and Anna, Bluebeard's wife's sister, entered the castle. His wife asked for 10 minutes with her sister. The girl ran to Anna and asked her if she could see her brothers coming as promised. But Anna replied,
No, I don't see anyone.
Just then Bluebeard bloomed.
Wife, your time is up. Come here.
I'm coming,
she called, and again asked her sister.
Aren't our brothers coming? No,
replied Anna. Again Bluebeard shouted,
Come down at once, or I'll come up.
Trembling, his wife went downstairs. Bluebeard was clutching a big knife. Just then, Anna called out,
Sister, I could see 2 horsemen coming.
Bluebeard said,
They too will die.
But as he was about to bring the knife down on the girl, 2 young men burst into the room. They were her brothers. Drawing their swords, they leaped towards Bluebeard. Needless to say, the young lady was never curious again.
Oh, that was exciting, wasn't it? I'm so glad the young lady was saved.
True. Anyway, I'm glad you liked the story. Jack the Giant Killer.
Did you know that I saw this pretty butterfly today? Really? Oh, that is nice. I love butterflies too. The fairy godmother is on her way to tell us a story. Yay!
Gather around, children. Today I'll tell you the story of Jack the Giant Killer. Once upon a time, there lived a farmer who had one only son called Jack. He was hard-working and had a ready, lively wit, so nobody or nothing could ever get the better of him. At that time, in a mountain lived a horrible giant named Cormoran. He was almost as tall as an oak tree and as wide as an elephant. He was also very ill-tempered. The giant was a terror of all neighboring towns and villages. He lived in a cave, and whenever he wanted food, he would come down to the villages, where he would take whatever came his way. Everybody ran out of their houses when he came, while he took away their cows and sheep and pigs. He had done this for many years, so that all people were in despair. One day, Jack happened to be at the town hall when the magistrates were sitting in the council talking about the giant. He asked, "What reward will be given to the man who kills Cormoran?"
"The giant's treasure,"
they said, "will be the reward," said Jack. "Then let me undertake it." So he let a horn, shovel, and pickaxe, and went out to the cave one dark winter evening and started digging, and before morning had dug a pit 22 feet deep and nearly as broad, covering it over with long sticks and straw. Then he stored a little mold over it so that it would appear like plain ground. Jack then placed him on the opposite side of the pit, farthest from the giant's cave, and just as the break of day, he put the horn in his mouth and blew ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-ta. This noise woke the giant, who rushed out from his cave, crying,
"You horrible villain, why are you disturbing my rest? You shall pay dearly for this. I will take you whole and boil you for breakfast."
He had no sooner said this than he tumbled into the pit and made the very foundations of the mountain shake. "Oh, giant," said Jack, "where are you now? How will you boil me for your breakfast?" Then, after teasing the giant for a while, he hit him on the head with his pickaxe and killed him on the spot. Jack then filled out the hole with earth and went in search the cave where the giant lived, where he found lots of treasure. The people from the village, who were really grateful for Jack, decided to name him Jack the Giant Killer.
Oh, I'm so glad that mean giant died.
Yes, he had been disturbing the people a lot. Anyways, I'm glad you loved the story. Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves.
I do wish the fairy godmother would come soon. I would love to hear a nice and exciting story.
Your wish is fulfilled. Today, I'll tell you the story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Once upon a time, in a town in Perusia, there lived 2 brothers, one named Qasim and the other Ali Baba. Their father left them no great property. Though he had divided it equally between them, their fortune stood up in equal, but it was otherwise. Qasim married a widow who, soon after their marriage, became heiress of a large estate and a good shop and a warehouse full of rich merchandise, so that all at once he became one of the richest merchants and lived at his ease. Ali Baba, on the other hand, lived in a very mean dwelling and had no other means of maintaining himself other than his daily labor in cutting wood in a forest near the town and bringing it upon 3 asses to town to sell. One day, Ali Baba was in the forest when he saw 40 thieves stop in front of a cave. The leader said,
Open sesame.
and before Ali Baba's amazed eyes, the sealed mouth of the cave magically opened, and the men disappeared inside. To come out and close the entrance, the leader said,
Close sesame.
and the cave sealed itself once more. Trembling with excitement, Ali Baba waited till the thieves had left and then entered the cave. After saying the magic words, to his delight, he found lots of treasure. Ali Baba told his brother Qasim about the wondrous cave. Qasim set off to get some treasure for himself too. Sadly, he forgot the words to leave the cave, and the thieves killed him. Ali Baba discovered his brother's body in a cave. With the help of a servant girl called Morgina, he was able to take Qasim's body back home and bury it. Realizing that someone else knew about their cave, the thieves tracked Ali Baba down. The leader, disguised as an oil seller, stayed with Ali Baba.
He had brought along mules loaded with 40 oil jars containing the other thieves. Clever Morgana knew who the oil seller really was and poured boiling oil into the jars, killing the other thieves. While dancing in front of the leader of the thieves, Morgana stabbed him. Ali Baba was saved and lived happily with Morgana ever after.
Oh, that was exciting, wasn't it? Thieves, secret caves, jewels. See, girls are more clever. It was Morgana who saved Ali Baba.
True. Anyways, I am glad you liked the story. Jorinda, Jorindel.
Fairy Godmother, what is today's story about?
All right, today's story is about Jorinda and Jorindel. Once upon a time, in an old castle next to a forest, lived a mean old fairy. When any young man came near the castle, he became fixed and could not move till she came and set him free. When any pretty maiden came close to the castle, she was changed into a bird and put into a cage. There were 700 of these cages hanging in the castle, all with beautiful birds in them. Now there was once a pretty maiden named Jorinda and a lad named Jorindel who were to be married. One day they went for a walk in the forest. Soon they realized that they were lost. The sun was setting fast and they were quite scared. They were close to the old walls of the castle when Jorinda started singing and soon turned into a nightingale. Jorindel could not move. He stood fixed as a stone, and now the sun went quite down. The night came. The old fairy came forth pale, with staring eyes and a nose and chin that almost met one another. She seized the nightingale and went away with it. Poor Jorindel could not speak. He could not move from the spot where he stood. At last the fairy came back and made a releasing spell. Suddenly Jorindel found himself free. Then he fell on his knees before the fairy to give him back his dear Jorinda, but she laughed and said he would never see her again. He prayed, he wept, he sorrowed, but all in vain. Many a time did he walk as near to the hated castle as he dared to, but all in vain. He heard or saw nothing of Jorinda. One night he dreamt that he found a beautiful purple flower, and that in the middle of it lay a pearl. And he dreamt that he plucked the flower and went with it into the castle and released his Jorinda. In the morning, when he awoke, he began to search for this flower. On the 9th day, he found a beautiful purple flower, and in the middle of it was a large dewdrop, as big as a pearl. Then he plucked it and set out for the castle. He walked near it, and yet he did not become fixed. Soon he found himself close to the door. Jorindel was very glad. Then he touched the door with the flower, and it sprang open. He went in and heard so many birds singing. At last he came to the chamber where the fairy sat, and the 700 birds singing in the 700 cages. When he saw Jorindel, she was very angry and screamed with rage, but she could not come close to him because of the flower in his hand. He looked around at the birds, but there were many nightingales, and how should he find out which was his Jorinda? He suddenly saw the fairy take down one of the cages and run through the door. He ran after her, touched the cage with the flower, and Jorinda stood before him, looking as beautiful as ever. Then he touched all the other birds with the flower and released all the girls, and he took Jorinda home, where they were married and lived happily together.
Oh, what a horrible fairy that was. I'm so glad all the girls are safe. Yes, I am happy that Jorinda and Jorindel are together.
I'm so glad you liked the story. Iron Hans. All right, children, today I'll tell you the story of Iron Hans. Once upon a time, a king's son was taken into a forest by a wild man whose body was brown like rusty iron. The wild man put the prince in charge of a gold well and asked him to see that nothing fell into it. But the boy's hair fell in and turned golden. The man was unhappy and sent him away to learn about life, but added that if he was in trouble, he just had to come to the forest and cry, "Iron Hans." The prince started working in another king's garden, where he kept his golden hair hidden under a cap. However, once the princess caught sight of it. Soon the country was at war. The prince wanted to help, so he went to the forest and he called Iron Hans 3 times. Iron Hans gave him a steed and a troop of warriors. With these he won the war for the king. On his way back to the castle, he gave the troops back to Iron Hans. When the victorious king came back to his palace, he talked of a strange knight who came to my assistance with his soldiers. No one knew it was the poor prince who had worked in the garden. One day, the king decided to proclaim a feast where the princess would throw a golden apple. The king hoped that the strange knight would come. The youth went out to the forest and called Iron Hans and asked him if he could catch the golden apple. Said Iron Hans. He was given a red armor and a horse, with which the youth took his place among the knights and was recognized by no one. The king's daughter threw the apple to the knights 3 times. The youth caught it every time and galloped away. The king's troops ran after him the 3rd time. They could not catch him, but hurt his leg and caught a glimpse of his golden hair. The king's daughter realized that it was the boy who worked in the garden. He was summoned, and the king's daughter took off his cap, and his golden hair fell down over his shoulders. Everyone was amazed. He revealed that he was a strange knight. He asked the king for his daughter's hand in marriage. During the wedding, the doors opened, and the stately king came in with a great retinue. He went up to the youth, embraced him, and said,
I am Iron Hans, and was enchanted by a wild man, but you have set me free. All my treasures are yours.
That was a very nice story indeed.
Good things happen to you if you are good. Well, until next time.